Welcome back to another episode of the Executive Code podcast. You're very, very welcome, where we're discussing everything to do with personal mastery. I'm joined here with Nicole to answer the questions that she has on that particular subject matter of personal mastery. So, Nicole, what have you got for us this week?
Hi, Paul. We recently worked on my pilot's manual where you uncovered the 4 elements that make up my Genius You, which we talked about in episode 82. So could you share your process when working with clients, and why isn't this something people can do on their own?
Okay, good question. First of all, so let me, first of all, for people that don't know what the pilot's manual is, and for people that don't know what are the 4 elements that make up the Genius You, let me go through each one of them. The pilot's manual is what I call the 4 elements that make up the Genius You. Now, I call it the pilot's manual because a lot of the things that are in my business, I use aviation terminology. And again, it's just a bit of fun. But it's also it's a part of me that I love things to do as an experiences to do with aviation. So that's the reason why I bring a lot of terminology from an aviation perspective. And as listeners will know of our podcast, Nicole is a pilot as well. So again, it's another way of how we bring aviation into everything that we're doing here within the business itself. So the pilot's manual, think of it from the perspective of, it's the manual for your life. If you want to find out what your life purpose is, you do the pilot's manual. If you want the manual to what's making up the Genius You, well, then that's the pilot's manual. So the 4 elements that are contained within the pilot's manual, first of all, there's your genius drivers. Your genius drivers is literally what's going to bring you joy and fulfillment throughout your life. The next is your genius role. And over the years, I've identified 10 different genius roles, and each person will play one of those genius roles. It's a role that they do unconsciously. They don't have to work at it. They don't have to develop any skills at it. They literally just do it unconsciously. But with every single genius role, there's also a frustration point and a shadow side. And if you don't know what that frustration point is, or that shadow side, well, then that's what creates self-sabotage. So your genius role is how you are to fulfill your mission in life. Next, it's your genius quest. Your genius quest is what you are to do. That is what your mission is, or what people will see as being what their purpose is. So your genius quest is actually what your mission, and that's what we find out by going through the process of the pilot's manual. And lastly, the last piece, then the 4th element, is your genius inspiration. And that's where I talk about what is your true why. Now, some people think they know what their why is, but they're working out from a conscious perspective. And your true why does not come from your conscious. It comes from your unconscious. And secondly, they try and work out their why based on what they're currently doing. And what they're currently doing may not be what they're supposed to be doing in the first place. So your true why is what I call your genius inspiration. When you get those 4 elements together, that's the pilot's manual, and that's what makes up your Genius You. So ultimately, and then on top of that, what you're doing is you're trying to, in order from a personal mastery perspective, it's trying to work in line with your genius pendulum and making sure that your genius pendulum is in equilibrium. That's where all the different elements work together. So what do I do? Well, first of all, again, some listeners may not be familiar with who I am, what I've been doing over many, many years. So let me explain a little bit about that. One is that when I was born with, and I grew up with particular gifts. As Liam Neeson would say, I've got a very special set of skills. So as I was growing up as a kid, I would see images, I would get knowings, I would get insights, and I would also know what it feels like because I would actually experience the same feeling for somebody else as well. And so I would get those knowings, insights, imagery, and the empathic feelings for other people that I would come across. As I developed in my career, what I found was that the more I guided the people I worked with in line with the insights, the knowings, and the imagery that I would get for people, well, then the more successful that they became. So when it came to business, or when it came to them personally, the more successful they came, or got to the point of, as I was guiding them with using the insights and knowledge that was given. But here's the thing. There will be individuals that I would share the insights with, the knowings, and the visions of what I would get for people. But 2 things would happen. One is that they would either get too overwhelmed from the perspective, they would start immediately getting into the question mode of, who am I to do that? There's no way I could do that. That's huge. That's phenomenal. And how on earth could I even achieve that level of what I would be sharing with them? That was one thing that happened. So indirectly, instead of me trying to, from the intention of trying to put them on the right track, in some instances, I actually put them more far off the track because they got too overwhelmed. And then the next thing they used to show for some people, not everybody, but for some people, was that they would come back to me and say, "Paul, you're just making it up." So, you're telling me these things, but again, the conscious mind can't rationalize it in some respects. And therefore they would respond to me, say, "Paul, you're just making it up. You're just, I don't know where you're getting the information from, and therefore you're just making it up." So there was nothing concrete for them. So over the years, what I've been doing, because I've been working with so many hundreds of the different individuals, what I decided to do was start to develop a methodology in order to, and I was also in some respects kind of doing it for myself as well, because I also wanted to prove for myself as much as I wanted to prove for my clients that the knowings and the insights and the imagery that I was getting for other people was, for one better word, factual, or as much as factual as possible. Now, I'm a trained accountant. I'm a perfectionist. I'm logical. So therefore, it was natural for me to want to develop a methodology or a structure or a system in order to substantiate the knowings and the insights of the imagery that I got for clients. So that's what I've been working on for quite a number of years now at this stage. So ultimately now, at this point, when I'm working with clients, what I'm doing is I still get the insights and knowings for my clients, but I don't give them that information up front. I go through a questioning process with them. So the methodology is basically, it's a whole series and a whole load of questions. And Nicole, you've done your pilots manual, so you know the kind of some of the questions that I ask. So it's by going through a whole series of questions. But also on top of that, what I'm doing is I'm working from an intuitive perspective to guide those questions. The whole purpose of the questions is to get the evidence in the individual's life. So therefore now they can see the evidence in their life. And I use the analogy of, our unconscious mind leaves breadcrumbs in our life. So by finding the evidence in our life, we're actually finding or seeking out those breadcrumbs. And the whole point of those breadcrumbs is to lead us back home to who we truly are. So ultimately what I'm doing by asking the questions and by working with the questions on an intuitive basis as well, is I'm guiding the individuals to find the evidence in their life. And then when we look at all the evidence and we bring it all into our conscious mind and onto the table, now we can actually say, well, look, here's all the evidence. And now we can actually bring the picture together and say, well, that's what your purpose is. That's what your genius drivers are. That's what your genius role is. That's what your genius quest is. And that's what your genius inspiration is. When you bring all those elements together, that's your purpose. That's your absolute, true, unique, individual purpose for you. So what I'm doing is literally putting that on information together based on the questions that I'm asking. Are some of the questions based, are they work on the methodology? Yeah, they absolutely do. But there's other questions that are based on the intuitive side, because as I'm getting the imagery and the knowings for people, and for some people that know how to work with intuitive, they'll understand that what they'll get is they'll get knowings and insights and imagery. So what I'm doing is I'm matching the questions that I'm asking with the imagery and the insights and knowings that I'm getting for the client that I'm actually working with at that point in time. Now, are there times where I'll get to the point where I just know the client is never going to get it, in terms of no matter what questions I ask, they're never going to get the right answer. I don't mean right answer in the sense I'm just trying to put them into to make them match particularly. It's more just a case of, in some moments, there'll be times whereby I'll say, actually, you know what? Look, here's the piece of information that you need to receive, or here's the piece of information that you need to have, because that's a little bit more specific. And I could ask hundreds of questions and still not be able to get that individual to, for one better word, the right answer. And I mean the right answer from the perspective of what they're here to do. So I'm using a combination of the intuitive questioning, but also the questions from the methodology perspective. To answer your question from the perspective, can individuals do this by themselves? I'm actually trying to develop the methodology to such a way that people will be actually get to the point of they'll be able to either read a book or do an online course or whatever, where I literally teach them what's the questions that they need to ask themselves, what is it that they need to figure out, and therefore by going through that course or that book, for example, that they'll be able to get all the answers for themselves and therefore now be able to know what each of those elements are of their pilot's manual and ultimately what their true life purpose is. And my whole aim is I'm trying to reach as many people as possible. And the only way I can do that is one is by building a community, which is the executive code community. And through that, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be bringing people in group workshop together. And therefore, I'll actually be working through the pilot's manual with people within a group scenario. But my ultimate aim will be to turn it into an online training product, for one better word. And therefore, now it's more accessible to so many more people out there in the world. And the bottom line is, the more people that are on their true unique life purpose, the better the world is. There's no two ways about it. The better the world is. And the more individuals literally will have that sense of joy, fulfillment, and meaning and purpose in their life. So that's my mission. That's what I'm trying to do. It just takes a little bit of time to get it done and to work with everything that I'm doing in terms of clients of what I'm doing in relation to in the community and trying to grow a business.
So before you actually work with a client, you already know what the answers to their 4 elements are. And the process of going through the pilot's manual is actually just for them to discover it for themselves.
Primarily.
Right.
I won't, it's when I know when I've connected with the client. And so what I mean by that is, so I don't, to answer your question, there's some occasions where I will get insights and knowings and imagery before the client even comes on a Zoom call. I'm not asking for it, but all of a sudden I just start getting information. And therefore that information is relevant for the client that I'm about to go on the call with. And then as I'm actually working with the client and having a conversation with the client, it's I'm getting more information and more downloads, more insights, more imagery. And that's more for the actual client itself. Is it for every single client? No, it doesn't. And hence the reason why it's also one of the reasons why I was developing the methodology as well. So therefore, for the clients that weren't as, that I couldn't get that strong connection, it's a bit like, I know we were having difficulty with our Wi-Fi internet connection here, trying to record a podcast. It's the exact same thing. There's clients that I'll work with whereby the internet connection, for want of a better word, is so amazingly clear and so powerful that the insights that I get is just, for me also, is hugely overwhelming in a good way. From the perspective, is just such amazing to be able to get that information from my clients. And there's other times whereby that internet connection is a little bit intermittent. So that's where the methodology really kicks into play then. So yeah, in some respects, I know some information before the person comes even on the call, and I get a lot more information than as I'm working with the client. And just depending on, I'll also know as regards there's some information that I can't necessarily share with the client at that point in time because something needs to happen, and therefore I can't share that information. Whereas the vast majority of information I do share.
What does that level of connection depend on? So what affects it? Why is it's for some clients than others?
Yeah, it's pretty subconsciously. So a client will want to know the answers, and they'll say consciously, yeah, I'm open, I'm completely open, and you can tell me everything that you can possibly tell me. And so consciously they're saying it, but subconsciously they're not. They're closed. And basically what they're doing is they're bringing their energy field and they're closing themselves down completely. And therefore they don't really ultimately want to find out. And therefore that's where the internet connection isn't that great, for want of a better word. But my way around that is through the methodology that I've developed as well. So I can still find the information and I can still absolutely, so I'll 100% be able to tell an individual what their purpose is based on the methodology that I've developed. And because I'll always be able to find the evidence in their life in order to find those 4 elements for their life. So I don't necessarily have to rely all the time on my intuitive side. So if that internet connection, let's use that as the analogy. But if that internet connection isn't as strong, I can still rely on the methodology, and they'll still be able to get all the answers that they need in order to know what their true unique life purpose is.
The self-guided training course you mentioned is interesting because that's one way of delegating to reach more people. Because you spend up to, is it 3 hours with each client when you're working?
Initially, what I do is I spend a half a day with a client, and that's literally to find those 4 elements. And what I do when I'm working with a client is that if I need to add on more time, I add on more time, because my whole focus is to get those 4 elements. So if it takes longer, I'll add on more time in order to actually get those 4 elements. And then once we've got all the 4 elements, what I then do is I leave the client for about a week, and then I have another session with the client, because invariably what then shows up is a whole load of other questions and other realizations, or what I call aha moments, whereby they reflect back and they're able to see the evidence in their life going back all the years of their life. And now all that comes is a whole load of aha moments and, oh my God, oh yeah, that's when that happened, and that's when this happened, and so on. So they're able to join all the dots based on the evidence that I've just given them. So what I don't like to leave my clients just in, for one better word, I don't like to leave them in limbo. So what I then do is a week later, I arrange another Zoom meeting with them, or face-to-face, depending on the clients, meeting with them. And then I answer any other questions that they might have. And now that makes it a little bit more sense for them. And therefore, once that happens, then it's a case of, now we need to work on, okay, so how do we monetize it? If they want to be self-employed, it's a case of how do we monetize it? Or if they want to be employed and build a career, okay, now it's trying to define what's the career path that's absolutely best suited for them. So it's not necessarily that you have to create your own business. You don't. You can actually be employed within the company and still work on your purpose. I got an email there, Nicole, from a client over the Christmas period. And it was just a couple of days before Christmas. And it just blew me away, because it was just phenomenal to receive the email. And what he said in the email, I did a pilot's manual a number of months for him previously. And he was just sent an email to me just over Christmas period, just to thank me for the fact that I got literally all the elements for his pilot's manual in the session that I had done for him many, many months ago. And he was just so appreciative. He said in the email was, I spent years looking for the information that you were absolutely able to provide for me in the space of a half a day. And it still blows his mind in some respects that I was able to get all the information that he needed in a half a day, that he spent so many years with so many different people, different coaches and mentors and different people all over the world, trying to find the answers of what his true life purpose was. And what he was filling me in on the email that he sent me was that he's developing a career. He's now got a job that's literally ticking every single one of his genius drivers and working on his purpose. And it was just amazing and phenomenal to actually see that kind of email from somebody that's been working on their pilot's manual, as in their purpose, for a number of months. And just the gratitude that he had was huge. And that, honestly, that's part of why I do what I do. It's such phenomenal work to be able to do. And I just love doing it. I absolutely just love doing it. Hence the reason why I want to try and get so many more people, because I can see the difference in it for people. I just want to reach more people in order to be able to do what it is I absolutely love to do. The difference for them is huge. And, you know, people and listeners might be actually listening to this and saying, how do you mean you go through, just a whole lot of questions? You've just gone through it, Nicole, just a few months ago. And it's a case of, we just have a conversation, isn't it? There's nothing kind of woo-woo about it. There's nothing weird about it. It's actually, we just literally have a conversation. I'm asking you a whole lot of questions. You're answering those questions. Then we're bringing all that information together. And it's literally, it's as simple as that, isn't it?
Yeah, there's no preparation. You don't have to study for it or anything.
Yeah.
So, yeah, if it sounds scary, it's definitely not. You're just talking about yourself and your life. But it's a great way to learn more about yourself and get direction on how to play to your innate strengths in life. But if you're not ready to work on your pilot's manual just yet, anyone who's listening, come join us online in the free Executive Code community first and see what it's about and how it can help you.
Absolutely. That's what we're here for. And we've been in so many different activities. in the community over the last number of months in order to help people achieve what it is that they want to achieve in life. And it's just been absolutely brilliant to see the progress that people are making. People may not know we have a weekly mastermind meeting. And with that mastermind meeting, we have accountability brought in as well. So that's a way of how people can connect and get the support that they need to help them in their life or in their business through using the knowledge bank of our actual community. So we meet every Monday afternoon over Zoom, literally having that mastermind meeting. And then, as you said, Nicole, there's other areas within the community itself. There's the executive lounge, and then there's pilots lounge, where, again, we drill into more personal mastery and business mastery. And again, the whole focus is to help people on their journey. The more people, honestly, the more people we get living their true, unique life purpose, the better this world is going to be. And I say this in interviews that I do, whereby, the single most powerful way for an individual to reach their full potential is to be on their true, unique life purpose. It's the paramount way. So if you want to find out more, come join us in our community. All the links are in the show notes. So you can go to the show notes, or you'll find all the links there. If not, you can go to our website, paulwilliamdavis.com, and you'll find the links to all the different resources, but also to our community. It's called the Executive Code Community. Who knows? The podcast was called the Executive Code, so why not call the community the Executive Code Community as well? That's what it's called. So you're more than welcome to join us. We would absolutely love you to be there. And it'll give you an idea of how more you can learn, not just on the podcast, but also within the community itself. There's loads of different activities that we do there, and it's a great place to be. So I look forward to seeing you there. But until the next time, I wish you every success.